Now, in a first of its kind, the City of Johannesburg has adopted digital permits for its informal traders. Long at odds with the city's law enforcement authorities, vendors may now benefit from a better organized informal trade sector and more efficient services by the city. It's a far cry from the often bruising confrontations with the Johannesburg Metro Police Department. Joining us now to explain how these digital permits for informal traders will work is the city's MMC for Economic Development, Nkululeko Mbundu. Councillor Mbundu, good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Kwena, and good evening to the viewers at home.
And just on that, I mean, this is a groundbreaking system that we're going to talk about. But just generally, how are you aiming to improve the relations, particularly between the traders and the city? And we know that the relations have always been strained.
Look, I think it's, the informal traders are a very important stakeholder of ours in the city of Johannesburg. And it's as part of the informal trade policy, we need to bring organization in that space. And part of this organization involves us setting up a stakeholder forum where the city can intervene in the matters of informal traders and assist them wherever they have got challenges. Not only that, but also it helps bring an element of safety and security in their trading environment, ensuring that they can trade freely. But also it helps to ensure that the city can provide all the necessary services from waste collection to ensuring that the trading stalls are effectively built where there's foot traffic, for example, and so on. So there's a lot of engagement that takes place between us and the informal traders. So with the launch of the permit system, it gives us a better view of who trades where and with what goods. Not only that, but also it allows us to build a finite base of services for the informal traders so that we can better service them, and not only them, but also the property owners and the residents of the city.
Who specifically are these permits targeted at? Are they targeted at traders that are already within the system, or anyone that has intentions of trading, any vendor that has intentions of trading within the city?
It's both, actually. So there are lifelong traders, some who have been trading for more than 20 years. You do not want to disrupt their earnings. In fact, you want to improve their earnings and their livelihoods. So the first batch focuses on issuing and onboarding those informal traders onto a system. And then in parallel, we also run for new applicants. So if you look at the capacity for the city for informal trade, is about 8,100 stalls. And to date, we've got about 4,000 or thereabout that are on the current rent roll. So it opens up space for new entrants to come into the market in a distributed way, fashion across the city. So it's open for both the new and current, more importantly current, so that we do not disrupt their livelihoods.
By its nature, as we say, it's informal trading rather. So which means that there are no certain formalities that anybody can do it. How do you regulate that to make sure that you have the right numbers and the right people who are aware of this system and are able to use it?
You're quite correct. We cannot regulate an informal environment. It's more about bringing organization into that element. Again, like I say, when you look at the capacity for the city from a development planning perspective in terms of, or environmental health rather, in terms of issuing food safety permits, in terms of the leases from the Joburg Property Company, in managing the walkways, in providing ablution facilities, and so on. So we are trying to bring that into an organized structure, and also because the informal traders are represented as a body, we now have a formal engagement on a quarterly basis, which I chair, to listen to their challenges, to also look at their opportunities. I'll give you an example. There is somewhere in the region of about 15 informal trader associations in the city that are organized, plus a couple that are independent or individuals that are led by what they call block champions. And some of the inputs that we've received, for example, was that we need to help them with space to store their goods overnight so that they don't struggle to go and store their goods overnight. We need to maybe support them with facilities that would allow for daycare for children, for women that are trading, so that the children can be taken care of and they can get tutoring. and potentially also opening up other opportunities for them to deliver other services beyond just informal trading. So it really does help them in the sense that there is a much more organized way of engaging together with the city. But not only that, the city also benefits because we can then start to collect rent from the stalls. It also improves the city's revenue collection initiatives. And we know that every stall that is out there does actually pay rent to the city in exchange for the services that the city provides. And that way it eliminates the burden that we have on the city in the current disorganized manner, so to speak.
You touched on the issue of space. How do you address the issue of space in that if we are talking about something that is informal in this regard, you know, can anybody just bring their wares, their fruit, whatever, and put up a space and call them an informal trader? How do you address that, and particularly talking about this new digital format that you're talking about?
So this is coupled with some work we're doing together with development planning that does spatial planning. So we look at the inner city master plan. And in there, we look at where the transport hubs are, because really informal trade should be close to where the transport hubs are. It services that market that uses public transportation. So we have done a study that looks at to what extent can we, in looking at traffic studies as well, to what extent can we provide a spatial plan that is conducive for the traders to make enough money, having access to their customers, but also not overburdening the traffic situation in the city. So that comes with a plan on its own. So when we issue the permits are accompanied by a lease and a stall number, and that location is captured in the system via geospatial services. So we'll know at any point in time where a trader is and whether they are supposed to be there. So it's really coupled with a number of other aspects that are supposed to support the proper functioning of the informal trade.
So you're saying that this is going to be a digital permit. Exactly how will it work? Because one would presume that the old one would be like a form that one maybe would download and fill in and then submit to a particular office. How does this one work?
So look, we've got a number of phases in terms of delivering this. Today we are delivering what we call the minimum viable product. And the minimum viable product looks at what's the earliest entry we could do, and that is the onboarding component. So it is a web-based interface that captures the details of the applicant and attaches the applications as well. By the way, it is manned, so we do provide support, bearing in mind that you may be dealing with people that are not necessarily computer literate. So throughout our 9 opportunity centers around the city, there will be staff that is meant to take the applications and onboard the informal traders. And there it catches your name, your ID details, your address details, the type of products that you sell, your stall number, and so on and so on. So some pertinent information pertaining to the informal trader. And what it does then, it helps us keep an electronic record of information that becomes available at any point in time. So that's phase 1. As we move on to the other phases, we'll start to integrate into the revenue services at SARS. We are almost close to finalizing our MOU with the Department of Home Affairs. We'll then be linking up to the Home Affairs National Identification System. Then later, maybe potentially linking up to the Department of Labor, because part of the policy says that you cannot work and be employed while you are an informal trader. That space is going to be reserved for the people who are not employed or whose livelihood is really trading. So this is the first of a number of enhancements that we are going to be implementing. So phase 1, it really just looks at having a biometric fingerprint capturing of the details, as well as capturing the entire application details, uploading it. It's a cloud-based system. It becomes available to any interested party within the city and across the departments as well.
You speak about this being digital, and you address the issue of maybe people who are not necessarily computer literate, who are technologically advanced. How do you address that aspect? Is there an option for those who are not able to do that?
So the traders don't touch the system at all. So that's the interesting part.
Okay.
So we've got staff that's trained. The staff is trained to onboard all they've got to do, so the only interaction between the trader and the system is at the moment of onboarding an application, but it is meant, okay? And when we issue the actual permit. So all the trader does here is give us the details, we process the application. If successful, we issue them with a digital card with a QR code, and that QR code is going to be used for bylaw enforcement, as well as other departments that, like environmental health services, for example, where officers can come and scan the QR code. It'll bring up all the information about that particular trader. So the traders themselves do not touch it. So it's a back-end system, so to speak. But it greatly enhances our ability to manage that space, both for property owners, the residents, as well as the city, as well as the informal traders.
You spoke about biometrics, naturally, ID numbers, and so on. Is it specifically for South Africans? What about those that are informal traders and are not South African citizens?
Look, the informal trade policy is very clear. It says that it is open for South Africans and foreigners who are in the country legally as per the Immigration Act 13 of 2002. Now, I know it's a hot topic in terms of who are here in the country legally or not. That's not for us to handle. That's for Home Affairs to advise us as we run the platform. So we open it up indiscriminately, and Home Affairs will let us know. We'll verify against Home Affairs database as to the legality of the people that are in the country. So in essence, I think the system will weed out quite a great deal of illegality, and that's how we have designed it, to make sure that it brings compliance into that space, and that compliance then naturally gives the ability for legitimate traders a better livelihood. So we expect that with the implementation, working with the other departments like Home Affairs and Revenue Services, we are then able to really identify the true beneficiaries of the informal trade itself.
And just finally, MMC, what has been the response from the informal traders or their representatives that you've been in conversation with about this project?
It's overwhelmingly positive, I must tell you, Gwena. We engage with them on the regular. Part of the implementation of the permit system is going to be a stakeholder engagement together with informal traders. So part of the policy makes room for the formation of a stakeholder forum, which is made up of 40% representation by informal traders and 20% representation by property owners and 40% by the city, which are the three key stakeholders. And on the main, they really welcome the implementation of the policy and the permit. They view it as something that is really positive. It's a long time coming. I think it's been, we're talking close on 9 years since this initiative was initially started and interrupted by court orders and so on. We've made it a point that we become very compliant, 100% compliant according to our constitution, and in order for us to be able to protect the rights of our traders. And that in itself is what they are welcoming, is a very positive step. And also because it helps them grow up the value chain. We don't want them to remain informal traders. We want to structure their environment in such a way that they can sell better, make more money, and then grow up the value chain. Our objective as economic development in the city is to put more money in the pockets of our citizens and make sure that we create a business-friendly environment. And that's exactly what the policy is doing. And they really do understand it, and they welcome it.
Earlier in the year, MMC, if I may, you introduced a project where there's about 250 officers from JMPD that was helping in just managing, informal trading or on the streets. How has that project been, and are you seeing it bearing fruit? Looking at the relationship naturally between informal traders and police has not always been rosy.
Yeah, look, what we're doing is jointly with Public Safety and MMC Tembe is to have a focused unit for informal traders based on the implementation of the policy itself. So everything is on a face-by-face approach. So we look at this 250 and going into the midterm budget review in February, we want to make sure that we build up that capacity. But we've got now in principle that agreement of having the 250 dedicated. So currently as it is, you've got them almost performing a dual function, so a policing function. But what this will help us with by capacitating with the policy is to have focused JMPD officers on informal trade, and they are also represented in the informal trader stakeholder committee. So you foster a relationship, a formal relationship between law enforcement at the top together with the informal traders on the other side, and therefore to make sure that we look after the interests of both parties and avoid any unnecessary confrontation or discrimination that can potentially take place in the ground. It's all about the relationships. So for us, we want to foster those relationships within the stakeholder forum. And not only that, there's something called the task team that's chaired by the city manager. So economic development only focuses on policy formulation, which we've done, as well as issuing of the permits. Further on, you still have pick it up that has to do waste management. You've got health that is going to do inspections. You've got JPC that is going to do lease management, the ombudsman, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a number of entities that are then chaired under the task team. So we are building a solid relationship between the city and the informal traders.
MMC Mbundu, thank you so much for coming through to talk to us. I appreciate your time and your insight.